This guy right here, he is a red-blooded American. But you know where he is right now? He's in Russia, preparing to help the forces invading Ukraine illegally, and part of their large-scale invasion, which was an expansion of the 2014 illegal invasion of Crimea and in Donetsk and Luhansk. He has decided that he's going to leave his home in Boston, Massachusetts, and come all the way to Russia to join with Russia because he believes it's the right thing, because he believes in local politics, and he started to learn about geopolitics, and geopolitics is so important, so he wanted to do the right thing, at least according to him. He talks about his service in the American military and the Air Force, and the fact that he was a city councilor in Massachusetts, in Boston. Oh my goodness, wow, a guy from Boston. But all things that he's presenting, all of this image of himself, not all of it is as it seems, as he's trying to show the public, as he's trying to twist the public into believing of him over there in Russia. And I'm pretty confident the Russians know something about his past. Let me just play a few minutes of this guy talking, and then we'll read the dirt that the Russians almost certainly have on him and is easily publicly available, and is shocking his colleagues at home.
Boston. I was like, okay, no, I like it. Yeah, so like I said, I'm from Boston, Massachusetts, and I served 10 years in the U.S. Air Force, some years in the Massachusetts Air National Guard, and I did 2 years as a city councilor. And when I got involved in politics, I zoomed out into the international level of politics, and you really kind of stop and pause and think about what's going on here, and you feel like you have to do something about it. So I came in January, I spent some time in Moscow, then I came to Donetsk. I was in contact with some of the folks in Pyatnashka, the international brigade in Donetsk, and I served there for 3 months. And then after that, I had some friends that went on to serve with the Ministry of Defense, the 137th Brigade, where we're here. And they said, well, come on, it's great. And so I decided to join them, and here we are. You said good skill. I didn't say it. Yeah, no, I had training. I had academic training. I was an E6, it's a tech sergeant. My job was air-based defense. It's military, police, security forces. We deal with things like drones and other things, other problems, internal, external. And yeah, I've definitely been able to apply some of those skills, leadership skills as well here. Yeah, well, I mean, look, I've heard that question come up a lot, and what I say to that is the United States and Russia are not at war. The United States has done things that are very provocative, very bad. It's been involved in other people.
Okay, so he's moved on from, hey, here's my experience, and I'm just an all-to-American to America, my country. I'm an American, but a good one, guys. I'm not like one of the other ones. And let me just say, my country, wouldn't you know it, this country, Russia,
politics, other nations' interests, and should not be doing that. I always say, and Sergei Lavrov said this a couple of weeks ago, I think that the country is ran by different people than the people that live in the country and feel a different way.
Is Russia run by Russians, or is it run by a small collection of elite? Like, when in America, you could say that there's a problem of, like, for example, very rich people using their money and influence to impact like politics and stuff like that, and that's like a genuine critique. But when I think of Russia and I think of Sergei Lavrov, the guy who's talking about making this critique, how big is his mansion? Where are his kids? Are his kids in the armed forces? Are they fighting? Or his grandkids in the armed forces? Are they fighting? What about the rest of the Russian elite? Like this is only something you say if it's been fed to you. It's not something that I think is coming from the heart. And how many soldiers are really like on the front line like, can I just say, Commander Lavrov, Sergei Lavrov, I was listening to Foreign Minister last week. Like, I very rarely in my interview with Ukrainian soldiers have heard them say, I was down in the blues, but then I just remember what good old Zelensky told me. Like, it's not something I experience very often. I'm not saying it's impossible, and he's one of the foreigner ones. So, he could maybe be reading the press briefings more and believing a lot of it more. Who knows? But I just find it bizarre.
I think it's important we've got an election coming up in the United States. I think it's important for people to just, do their own research and kind of read about things from independent news outlets and understand what's really going on.
Independent news outlets, like where we're talking now, the Russian Ministry of Defense, the Russian Ministry of Defense has their logo in the top right-hand corner, man. independent news outlets like the Russian Ministry of Defense. Just, it's funny. It's funny. Of course. Let me be good faith to this, totally not traitor.
On here, understand that this started back in 2014 with our politicians coming down here and saying all sorts of different things and making all sorts of different promises, and this doesn't represent the true interests of the American people. It's not, what benefit is it for the United States to have multi-million-dollar tanks rolling down here trying to kill people, missiles firing at a beach of innocent people?
What interest is it of Russia's? You can talk about territory, you can talk about resources. What interest is it of Russia's to be in Ukraine? It's certainly not for the health and well-being of the public. The Russian speakers of Ukraine are the ones that have gotten the most decimated by the war, because it's their populations in the east that have gotten bombed and shelled and decimated. I mean, of course, there's Ukrainian villages that are getting destroyed too. A lot of these villages that are getting occupied, people don't know about, are actually largely Ukrainian speaking. They just think, oh, it's in the east, therefore it's all Russian. No, a lot of them are Ukrainian speaking out in the villages. That used to be the thing back during the Soviet period. It was like, oh, the village speak is Ukrainian. If you're in the city and you're smart, you speak Russian. That was like the stereotype that was kind of implied by larger society. But God, this guy looks goofy. I'm sorry, man. It's hard to take this seriously too long. I don't think we're going to watch the full 5-minute thing. We're going to watch as much as we can, but as much as I can stomach. And then we'll move on to the reveal, because the reveal is kind of obvious. And I think the Twitter context added feature already kind of gave it away.
What interest is that?
And it's good that the context added feature on Twitter is giving it away too. I'm happy that people can see it.
So there's no interest to that. Our country's trillions of dollars in debt. Our country's collapsing. It's falling apart. And, it's just not, in my opinion, representative of the real interests of the American people. So when I hear that question, I don't consider myself a traitor. The United States and Russia aren't at war. And, in the future, I think that the people that caused this in my country should be held responsible for what they've done. And we can have some sort of...
Man, I'm here looking at the ruins of Ukraine, and my first thought is, God, somebody should really arrest Anthony Blinken for the crimes committed here.
Friendship between Russia and the United States. Yeah, of course. I mean, I've worked downrange with these guys, like we say in the U.S. military, on the front, and I absolutely trust them to have my back 100%, and I know for a fact that they trust me as well. And what I always tell people is, because this is a question that comes up in the U.S. military. It's about the people that you're with. It's about the people that you're serving with, because this isn't, to be realistic, this is a dangerous situation. We're all down here serving, we're doing our job, but what makes it or breaks it is the people that you're with. And these guys have been great. They speak English, they're professionals. They help you when you need it if I don't have something or if I don't understand.
Okay, they're all great, they're all fantastic. At the end he says like some nationalist slogans like hurrah, victory for all. Anyway, he likes to diddle underage girls. That's the big reveal. So he used to be a city councilman for Massachusetts. For 2 years he was. I guess he was a known figure in the community. He was able to get elected. He did have some military experience. But what happened is that he called the police about a stolen firearm, and he wanted to be like, my gun got stolen. I assume it was probably similar to that scene of In Bruges, considering this guy's demeanor and how he behaves. If anybody remembers that scene, stupid reference. Anyway, he was over there, and he was, he calls the police. They come in and they're like, okay, where's this firearm? They go through his phone and they find a picture of an underage girl naked. Obviously he was not underage. He was very of age. He was an elected politician. And so they're like, oh, this is bad. And then it starts going through the judicial system, and they start looking at it as like, oh, you're not supposed to have this. This is not good. What are you doing with these girls? And eventually he's supposed to go to court. He's supposed to have some guilty pleas and maybe some not guilty pleas. And we're going to see if the guy's, going away for possibly 18 months in prison. He's facing serious time. I didn't read all the court documents, and the reason I didn't bother is because we never got the court case. We were supposed to get the court case earlier this year, but he disappeared in January. And then in April, because he was going to have his, sentencing in January, and then in April, images of him reappear in a Russian recruitment station, and all of his colleagues are looking in shock and in awe online as this guy wanted by American authorities for having underage content of a girl, while being in an elected office, flees to Russia to join the Russian army in their crusade for moral values. And the Russians, obviously, I mean, he's an elected politician. This is open. You can look all of this up. They can look all of this up. They know this, and they do not care. And they've decided to give this man a rifle and use him as another soldier to invade Ukraine. But considering a lot of the other people that they've recruited into the armed forces, that is not terribly surprising. The moral fiber of the Russian army right now is not what we would say as saintly. Maybe that would be the word, not saintly. Point is, though, I do want to make a point here. This is not like the first time we've seen something like this. Scott Ritter, popular American in Russia propagandist, goes in their networks, does book tours, telling them how weak America really is, how much stronger they are, how we deviated from all the smart strategies and we got everything too complicated with our technology, and Russia's much more smarter and intelligent, and they've got all the edges and advantages, and our ignorance and nonsense in the West is of the Russian way is too overbearing, and we don't understand the Ruski Mir, we don't understand the Russians. I'm one of the good Americans. This is the shtick. And he's gone from just going on Russian state TV while going on all these alternative media podcasts like Jackson Hinkle, who was just talking head there, or for example Jimmy Dore's programming, to just straight up going to like Kadarov's speeches and telling all of the soldiers how brave they are for going and invading Ukraine, and every American hides under their pillow of the fearsome Chechen soldier. The reason why he can't make a living, even though he's a former UN weapons inspector, that should be a man with some credibility in the United States, doing, say, normal, like, talk show appearances, talking about, say, oh, this is how we would do a inspection program in Iran, is that he was found to have been trying to diddle a child by the police. And when I say found to, I should have been found multiple times. It's just that one time they really got him and they had enough on him. So it was actually, they're trying to get him once and it didn't really go, they didn't get enough, but the second time they did, and they got enough and they got him. And he was trying to show who he believed was a 15-year-old girl, but was actually a police officer, his genitalia. And then he was embarrassed. He said in the court proceedings that it was George Bush's fault, kind of. Don't ask me. Go look. He says that the pressure for critiquing the Iraq war put him in a mental place. It's not good. It's not a good defense. Anyway, after getting caught for doing it again later, because it wasn't once, he got caught twice, even though they really got him 3 times. It's just they got charges for twice. He was still being put on a lot of alternative media shows because these people just did not care. They did not care about his possible credibility, whether this stuff could be used against him to, for example, take down, like, if you're going to Russia and you're doing all of this and you're just speaking for the Russian government, is there never any second of like, wait a second, this guy has like no credibility in the United States. Do you think he's just doing this because this is the only place that'll take him? Because that's my immediate thought.
Immoral.
But for these alternative media platforms, if there's if they're genuine, they're idiots. If they're not genuine, then they don't care, and they'd rather he be compromised, or they don't care that he's compromised, and they don't care that he's serving the Russian government. They just want the alternative perspective because the alternative perspective is popular and it sells. Either way, he's another person who's a sex pest. Richard Medhurst is another person who proliferates in these spaces, who has a problem with being a kind of a sex pest. There's a problem with all of these people being compromised. And sometimes it's in moral character, sometimes it's financially, and a lot of times it's stuff like this. And if you're wondering, like, why is it that so many of these people end up being sex pests, it's because if they're vulnerable for these reasons and can't get elected into the normal media or get jobs in the normal media space, then A, nobody else will take them, while the Russians will offer much more, and B, the Russians know they're vulnerable and they can be done with them like that. They're not going to be a problem within Russia, because let's say at some point Scott Ritter or one of these others started getting some moral fiber and they said, actually, I think this government's kind of bad. I don't like 1, 2, or 3. Well, then they can always say, well, you're a pedophile, you're a sex pest, get out of here. And then it's done. I mean, why do you think Dmitry Medvedev presents himself as a drunkard so much around Russia? And so much around in the Russian space? Is it just, and do you think it's just for, like, and some people say it's just because he is a drunkard. Others say it's to protect himself. If he degrades himself like that in public, he's not much of a threat. So these vulnerabilities can actually be assets because you're not seen as a threat. Because people can see areas where that stop you from climbing up the ladder. And Scott Ritter, because of that, cannot climb up the ladder. And this is somebody like that. Somebody trying to maybe get a new start at life, maybe just trying to run away from something. A lot of people who join as foreign mercenaries are people running away from things, which is unsurprising. A lot of foreign criminals. There were even instances of that in the Ukrainian forces where I talked to foreign volunteers saying, there was this one guy in my unit who was a real bastard. There was a guy in the International Legion who was a former like Polish mafia boss who was trying to engage people in looting. Thankfully, a lot of soldiers said, of course not, I'm not going to do that. But there's a lot of people who are running away from things, and this is just one of them. And the thing he's running away from is that he tried to do the dirty with underage girls.